Dolphins fans? What's going on? It is Ben Morgan of the Fins Up Network. Let's talk about some issues. Let's talk about some issues that are surrounding this team heading in to the 2025 NFL offseason. Now, it's funny because if I look at the Dolphins, I can say that the 2024 NFL season, it went off the rails for a variety of reasons, right? Between issues, play calling, just straight up personnel issues. There were some issues, but if you look at the team in general, you're thinking, we're not that far off. That window to compete, it's still there. We can make the playoffs. Like if we have a healthy Tua Tagovailoa, this team can make the playoffs. If we had some things break our way, if we could get some home field advantage, we could maybe make a little bit of noise. But then when you do a video like this and you prep for it and you start listing out all these issues, I'm going to highlight 5 today. You're like, wow, there are a lot of issues that surrounding this team. And I'm recording this on Monday. I just got done watching the divisional games for the playoffs. And it's like, wow, you look at these teams and maybe not everyone is outright complete. Like if you look at the Commanders, you would say their defense has holes, right? But you look at other teams like the Eagles got a really good defense and then they can run the ball down your throat. The Bills, we know all about the Bills. They got a decent defense, but you can't stop their run game. You can't stop Josh Allen. And guess what? If you do, they'll throw it over the top of you. So you look at in comparison to these other teams, and you're like, yeah, there's some issues that we need to clean up. So I actually put this topic out on the YouTube community page on Sunday during one of those games. So I wanted to share a couple of responses that came in. I won't go into a ton of detail on all of these, but chat about what you guys thought about as well. And by all means, in the comments, go ahead. If you didn't get the chance to throw it into the community page, go ahead and drop your biggest issues heading into this offseason in the comments. But Kangaroo Bob comes in. Quarterback one is not worth the money that's being paid to him. Can't afford a good offensive line with his contract. That's tricky to me. Like I said, I'm not going to go into a ton of depth on some of these, but the Eagles have a high-priced quarterback. They've got a good offensive line. The Chiefs have a high-priced quarterback. They've got a good offensive line. There's ways of getting around salary cap, and Tua Tagovailoa on an annual average salary, the AAV, it ain't even all that bad. So I know we've got some quarterback talk. We'll get there, but we agree on a lot of things, Kangaroo Bob, but I got to disagree with you on that one. Daniel comes in. I would say offensive guard and safety rooms need a complete overhaul. My biggest need, however, regardless of position, is physicality. Boom, you hit the nail on the head. You look at these playoffs team, and then you look at the Dolphins night and day. So, yeah, kind of what I said in the intro. We're on the same page, Daniel. I'll say that. This one's funny. Get an owner with a clue. Happy Evelyn. It runs deeper than that, but a lot of issues always end up starting at the top. And yeah, I don't think it's just as easy. Stephen Ross, I don't envision a world where he just turns ownership over. You kind of need something crazy. You need a scandal, maybe like the Commanders, in order for that to happen. Don't hold your breath. I agree with you. Our ownership is a little wonky sometimes. It gets us into more issues a lot of times than has solutions for problems, but don't hold your breath. Let's do one more. Zonka would run. There's a long list of issues. Yes, there are. All competing for the top issue status. I'll nominate one of many. No legitimate plan for quarterback 2 with a fragile quarterback 1 and a porous offensive line. That is where we agree. I 100% am with you. And spoiler alert, that's going to be one of the things that we talk about. In no particular order, let's start with the 5 I've got. Like I said, go ahead and drop yours in the comments as well. One of my biggest issues heading into this offseason, Mike McDaniel as the play caller, and every way I see it, I hear about it, it doesn't sound like he's in a hurry to relieve himself of these duties and give someone else the ability to actually be the play caller. He truly feels he is the best person for this job. Now, I've said it a million times. I like Mike McDaniel as a coach. He is a guy that players want to play for. He's done a good job with his schemes, putting this team in the right situation to succeed with the personnel that we have. Turn the play calling over, and it was a clear, obvious in-house choice this last season with Darrell Bevell right there. The guy has done it in the past. He's done it for Super Bowl teams. He was the guy for the job. And now guess what? He's being interviewed for the Browns offensive coordinator job as well. So who knows if he's going to end up being back. Like I said, I am cool with Mike McDaniel drawing up plays, developing game plans. He's done a good job utilizing our skill players. But when it comes down to it, it's almost like it's too much on his plate. He's late getting the play calls in. Short yardage situations, we all know that he's terrible at that. Get someone that can get back to the basics. Let that be their primary focus. Let Mike McDaniel handle the big picture stuff. And yeah, in the meetings leading up to the week, if he wants to be involved in game plan and situational stuff and schemes and everything, great. By all means, you should be there. But when it comes to Sunday afternoons and we need to have someone calling the plays, turn it over. I just don't see him turning those keys over. It's going to have to come from the top, and I don't know if that's going to end up being a thing. This issue, Dolphins fans, it's been there for as long as you and I can remember, and I think a lot of our focus goes to the guards, but I'm going to tell you why it's the entire unit of the offensive line. And we talked about the guards, and in 2024, they were a complete disaster. Liam Eichenberg, Robert Jones, just saying those names out loud just gives you a little bit of a queasy stomach. The problem with them is they were historically bad. That's an issue, right? But it's not like they were so bad. Typically, you'd be like, okay, next man up. We got to give it to another guy. There's no one behind them. There was no one behind them that this team trusted anymore. And if you would say, well, look at this performance, and if you look at the advanced analytics where they rank so poorly and you still can't turn it over to anyone else, that's an issue, both your starters and your depth. Now, if you look at the tackles, and this is why I say the entire unit. One second here. Last year, you got Teron Armstead, you got Austin Jackson. Teron Armstead is a candidate to retire this offseason. Austin Jackson has shown that he can stay healthy here and there, but yeah, he's an injury-prone guy as well. So if you fast forward to 2025, your potential starting tackles, if Teron Armstead retires, Austin Jackson, we already said he's injury-prone. And then you got Patrick Paul, an unproven second-year left tackle with technique issues. I know he got some snaps. I know he had brief moments of success, but he also had a lot of moments of failure this year as well. A lot of offseason to shake that out. But regardless, a second-year unproven tackle with technique issues. So while, yeah, I do think that offensive guard does remain the biggest issue on this line, I have more faith in Paul and Austin Jackson than I do on the interior guys we said. I'm cool with Brewer. Don't get me wrong here. I'm cool with Brewer. It's the guards. The tackles can also not be forgotten about. Keep that in mind. All right, let's go to the secondary. Another one where I keep talking about this, where I think we're in this window to compete, and then you start highlighting the issues, and you're like, yeah, the whole secondary minus Jaylen Ramsey right now is an issue. Patrick McMorris and Jordan Colbert, those are your Miami Dolphins safeties that are currently under contract for the 2025 season. Javon Holland, Jordan Poyer, Elijah Campbell, all scheduled to hit free agency. All weren't great in 2024 the way it was. We go back to the comments. We've talked about it all year. If there was a position that needed an overhaul, it was safety. So what if we bring those guys back? We're just going to run it back. I don't think any of us would be satisfied with that. That's why this entire unit minus Jaylen Ramsey is an issue. Because in 2025, your cornerbacks, you still got Jaylen Ramsey, you still got Kendall Fuller, you got Cam Smith, you got Storm Duck, you got Ethan Bonner, Isaiah Johnson, and Jason Maitre. Who outside of Jaylen Ramsey on that list do you trust? Maybe Kendall Fuller to an extent. Once again, another guy that dealt with some injury issues. He had a couple of struggles before he got here. He did have spurts. I'll give him that. He did all right in times here when him and Ramsey were both healthy. But outside of that, you got Cam Smith, who's a walking hamstring injury, right? You got Storm Duck, Ethan Bonner, Isaiah Johnson, Jason Maitre. All of those guys are undrafted free agents. We have hopes for those guys. We'd like to develop some of those guys, but a lot of those guys end up just getting propped up. We've talked about this before. They get propped up because of some performances that they have in training camp, but then we don't even trust them on game day, or they've got issues in practice where they're showing some flaws, and it's like, well, how are you going to throw this guy out there on a Sunday? Who of those guys do you trust outside of Jaylen Ramsey? Maybe Kendall Fuller. That's why cornerback is an issue too. So we got to overhaul the safety position. And Javon Holland, right? Javon Holland is right. Like, what are your options there? You can re-sign him and pay a ton. You can slap the franchise tag on him and pay quite a bit for 1 year, and then we go down this road again next year. I think with Javon Holland, I think he's an all right player, but I think at the end of the day, you're going to pay more for flashes than you are for consistent play. So yeah, you look at that safety position, because basically outside of the guys we mentioned, who was it? Patrick McMorris, Jordan Colbert, Colbert. You know how many snaps those guys have in regular season action? Yeah, I'm pretty much the same about as me and you. Like they're not littered with that. So yeah, we got to completely overhaul this entire secondary as it sits right now. All right, we talked about this one too. The backup quarterback position, a position that in the way you'd want to build a franchise, right? You could say, you know what, let's go cost savings on backup quarterback. Hopefully we don't need him. That's a position we can ignore a little bit. Let's go cheap at. We have proven with Tua as our quarterback, Kangaroo Bob, this is where you kind of come into play here. With Tua as your quarterback, you can't ignore the backup quarter position. You can't go cheap at the backup quarterback position. Tua has been healthy for one NFL season. Outside of that, basically everything he's done in college and pros has included injuries. Now, I would say even if we spend up and get a good quarterback, your season in 2025 is probably in shambles. If you lose your starting quarterback, look at the teams that are left. What you got? You got Josh Allen, you got Jalen Hurts, you got Patrick Mahomes, you got Jaden Daniels. Hurts missed a little bit of time. The Eagles built up enough of a lead. Outside of that, all those quarterbacks stayed healthy. If your quarterback gets hurt, there's a good chance your season's going to be in shambles anyways. But regardless, if Tua misses a game, 2 games, 5 games, you can't have this offense once again be dead last in the NFL when it comes to yards, when it comes to scoring efficiency, all of the metrics. We need a different backup quarterback. Let's go to one more here. And I went with the defensive line. Once again, it's not anything super specific, and I'll tell you why. Because just like last year's, we are short on defensive tackles outside of Zach Sealer. Remember last offseason, we basically just signed a bunch of guys to those short-term 1-year deals. And it worked out, right? We got a bit of a gem there with Calais Campbell for a while. But outside of that, we don't really have anyone on this roster right now that you're trusting for significant snaps alongside Zach Sealer. Now, if you look at edge, the names look good on paper, right? But if Bradley Chubb ends up getting released and he doesn't re-sign with our team, he's out of the picture. Plus, if he is here, can you trust him? Maybe he'll be back after taking the full year off, but we don't know. We haven't seen him in over a year now. Jaylen Phillips, he bounced back after the Achilles. He looked good after the Achilles. Well, now what? You just compounded that with a knee surgery. How's he going to be? Can we trust that as well? We all want to, right? I have faith in Jaylen Phillips, but with Bradley Chubb and Jaylen Phillips, can you trust that? Calais Campbell, we mentioned him on the interior. He's knocking on the door of retirement. If he doesn't retire, he's going to have suitors probably elsewhere for a 1-year deal. Are we going to bring him back? Who knows? Are we going to get year 2 growth out of a guy like Mohamed Kamara? We'd all like to. I loved what we saw on tape with him when we drafted him. I was super happy. But what did we see during the season? A bunch of game day inactive, healthy scratches. Can we get growth from him? Who knows? But I just asked a lot of questions, which means, yeah, we've got more questions than answers, despite a lot of resources being put into these positions, especially into that edge rushing position. Dolphins fans, there it is. That's a lot of issues. And I like I said, I didn't even get to all of them that made my list. So I'm sure you've got a lot more as well. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Go ahead and drop your issues heading into this offseason. I'd love to see where you guys are at with this one as well. I am going to wrap it there for today, Miami Dolphins fans. But until next time, fins up.